evening, everyone, and welcome to Eddie's podcast. This is a special Delta Sigma Pi edition where we will be interviewing candidates for Delta Sigma Pi Grand Office. And today we have a super special guest, someone I've known pretty much my entire Delta Sigma Pi career. Her name is Stacy Jordan, and she is a candidate for the Northeastern PVP. Stacy, are you with us today? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Eddie. Yes, we have known each other for a long, long time. I tell people uh, in the Northeast, how do you know the people in the South? I said, well, when you lived in the South for a long, long time, especially Carrie Burns' team, I know all of them from being a collegiate. In the case of Amy King, who's the Mid Atlantic RVP, I knew her because she lived in DC and was a DD for me. So it's being in the fraternity almost 28 years, you have relationships throughout the country, and so it's great to get the opportunity to talk to you.
It's always cool, I think, that gold and purple thread that kind of, even though we're different and diverse, and I love that about Delta Sigma Pi is the diversity the membership reflects. But whenever you meet someone and you may not know them, but you have that in common, and if you did the Delta Sig experience, you have a lot in common, and it just really jumpstarts things. And I've had many opportunities so far in my life post collegiate where I've made friends from Delta Sigma Pi, and not going through chapters or through Congress, but those people have made much more an impression in my life. So you're running for PVP. That's something new.
Yes, this is actually the second time I've run for PVP in the Northeast. I ran in 2013. So this is my second opportunity, having served as a regional vice president previously, and just spent the last 6 years being a trustee. I had some time over this past summer really to think about where I wanted to do next in my fraternity experience, and then I think that from my years of service, really I've been in either some type of volunteer role since 2001 that I can bring that experience to the board of directors.
And every time I've been at an event, I, I think you've been at every um, Grand Chapter Congress, except for the one right after you were initiated. So I've seen your face at every one, and whether it's foundation or you doing something else, you're always doing something, and you've been an incredible volunteer and worker bee. Because I can't remember a function where you're not doing something.
Yes, I've been to every Grand Craft Conference since 1995. With the foundation, either I've been a part of the events committee, or in 2017, when the Congress was in New Orleans, being responsible for the team that was responsible for fundraising for the foundation. And we raised over $100,000 with that team, not only myself, but all the alumni and the collegians who volunteered. So that was a great um, privilege to be a part of that. And again, 2019 was special. My family got to see me get my silver helmet in Atlanta. I lived in Atlanta. My family's in Atlanta. And to have my sisters be there, with one of my sisters being a brother, cousins, to my best friends, being there is really an opportunity for them to see in person what I've been involved in, because they have seen it externally from the outside, and to be able to be involved in that. So service to the organization has really been a key thing for me. The fraternity has helped me grow as a person, both personally and professionally, and giving back is really one of the tenets for me.
And kind of PvP is taking it to the next level because it's much more than a it the you're on the board of directors. So what do you think that Stacy Jordan brings to the board of directors that's unique and would benefit Delta Sigma Pi?
Well, like I said earlier, having served 6 years as a trustee, normally, you go on the board. That is really your first board experience for a lot of people. With the organization having two boards, one of them is the National Board of Directors and the Board of Trustees. So I bring 6 years of being able to understand that the decisions that you make is reflective of an organization, because the board has two premises. One, you are making, as a part of the team, you're making decisions that was going to affect the whole of the organization. So you have to have an understanding of the governance and the roles that you do in respect to that governance. And of course, from an operational perspective, you provide your expertise to the board and help the staff in any way that you're able. And one of the things that the pandemic has allowed us to do is to be more technology focused. And so, as a federal employee who's happened to be in IT and specifically cybersecurity, I bring my professional experience. I supervise a staff of 3 to 5 people, depending on the project. So, bringing that skill into mentorship and being a leader for my staff, into the team of being, leading of the team of RVPs for, and also working with committees and having pointing people to a committee, which is again, having led a committee and a subcommittee within the foundation. And then also, one of the tenets that we have in our organization is we want to have diverse leaders. And me being in the fraternity, as long as I've been in the fraternity, there's not been many people of color, specifically Black females, on our national board of directors. And so being elected will allow me to bring my experience and my voice to the national board. That's a little bit different from others.
Do you think currently the board reflects its the diverse membership?
Right now, it doesn't, and I think that that's one of the challenges. The board knows that when this past summer that they did an update, or really a amplification of its statement on diversity, is one of the additional things is to clear out, is to ensure that we do have diversity in our elected membership. Right now, we have Anuka eBay as past grand president and Corey Vasquez as the 2020 uh, Collegian of the Year. But we've never had a Black female on our national board of directors. Even in the RD days, there's never been a Black female. So, really, to be able to be the person that people look to and say, wow, I can ascend to that role, because sometimes you have to have someone in a position to think that that's attainable for you to achieve. And so, we've had quite a few African American females as RVPs, but we've never ascended to the national board of directors.
And being on the board of directors seems like it's a lot of fun, but the past couple of years, it's also received a lot of criticism for some of their uses of power, and I'm specifically talking about their use of emergency power and the fact that they have exercised that what's in the bylaws 3 times in the past 2 years, and some people are concerned that that is more times than it's ever been used in our 100-year plus history. I just wanted to get your take on that first time it was used 2 years ago after Congress, when the Congress said no to a proposal, and at the next retreat, I think it was about a month later, the board of directors reversed that decision using emergency powers, and wanted to get your thoughts on whether you thought that was needed or appropriate, or whether or not we should be governing by the use of emergency powers.
So let me talk about the overarching use of emergency powers. The fraternity has it set up in case of extenuating circumstances. In the case of the pandemic, we've had to use emergency powers to allow our chapters to have flexibility to be able to have a ritual not in person, because I'm a DD for George Washington Zyro. They have not been on campus since March of 2020. So if we did not exercise that opportunity, they would not have been able to have new members for almost a year now, which is will be 3 semesters. So when you use emergency powers to allow our organization to conduct our regular functions, that is a good means for that, because the board has to be agile enough to understand what is the big impact of us not exercising the emergency powers in order to keep the operations going. Our collegiate chapters are our biggest constituents, and we want to make sure that they're able to do what they need to do in terms of membership. In respect to the decision on the changes to ritual that occurred after the Atlanta GCC, I think that there was a lot of things that went into the board having to exercise that power. And I think that, there's a concern about transparency, where not the delegates was provided the necessary information in order to make an informed decision at Grand Chapter Congress. And that's why, really in this time, that we need to really be able to um, make sure that any major decisions that's occurring, that everyone is aware of those impacts prior to decisions being made. With respect to that decision in 2019, there was information provided by our insurance provider that really, when the board looked at what the delegates at that Grand Chapter Congress decided, it was in the best interest from a financial perspective to initiate the emergency powers. And so overall, obviously, making sure that our constituents, which is the Collegiate and Alumni Chapter, um, that are delegates at Grand Chapter, are involved in the process. But again, there is certain situations in which, for the benefit of the organization, that emergency powers may be necessary to execute.
Now, you being historically involved in Delta Sigma Pi, you have a lot of institutional knowledge, and you know what the Congress had to do on a previous ritual issue, and the fact that in that case emergency powers was never invoked, and it was a very lengthy, painful process, but eventually it got done. It took more than one Congress, and you know what I'm talking about. But if you were in the room uh, with that at that moment for emergency powers being put on the table, I'm going to put you on the spot here and Stacy, and ask you, you know, what would you have done if you were in that room when they were calling that vote?
Well, I probably, and I know exactly, being in the fraternity since 1993. Yes, I've been involved in 97, 2001 votes. My second Congress, which is the first as an alumni, I was the third delegate, because previous to the current governance structure that we had many bylaws and ritual proposals. And we were in New Orleans, and pretty much the third delegate was there till like 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, because of the sheer length of proposals that was going on, the changing the different parts of our ritual that we no longer have now. And so, uh, like I said, it is when you're in the room, you can provide your feedback based on your experience, and then you have to weigh what's the best for the fraternity. Again, we want to have a fraternity, not just we've been around since 1907, and we want to be around past both of us being here. And so, really, again, from what I understand of the situation that occurred, it was, looking at the information that was provided by our insurance provider, in terms of what, those changes in our ritual would be imposed, because again, there were some issues that was identified by some of our chapters about how ritual um, has been interpreted. And so we don't want to lose recognition across any schools because of some policies that might be inconsistent.
And you mentioned transparency. How do you think, what would you do differently to encourage transparency or to have a more transparent organization?
I think transparency comes both ways. I mean, obviously, even in my job as a supervisor, there's things that I can't communicate per se to to my staff, but you really give them the understanding of the decisions process of what goes into the decision. I think sometimes people just think we just anyone who is in a high level of leadership that there is um, decisions that are made without any considerations of others. And when individuals understand that feedback is provided and received on a decision, people understand it more. And so if you let people know, hey, we are thinking about doing X, how do you feel? And getting, feedback from that, and then incorporating what you have heard from your constituency into the decision making process. At the end of the day, as you know, being a past president of the trustee board, we all have to stand by the decision, and being able to provide that input, and knowing that you as an individual, if you've gotten it from a variety of different consistencies, and having those consistency understand, hey, this is what has happened. We did take feedback from a variety of different sources to come up to the decision that at the end of the day that is the best. And being able to communicate that. One of the things I want to do, if elected as PVP, is to have a quarterly um, opportunity to speak with the chapters in the province. Let them know these are some of the things that we're working on. And so if you have any input, sending that through through the command of the DD, communicating it back to the RVP, or if they feel more comfortable communicating that to me directly. That way, if there's any major decisions that it's going to have an impact, that people, have an idea of those decisions and be able to provide that feedback, which will help me as I communicate that on the national board.
Looking at the candidate beacons, I noticed that your particular race has the most competition for it, and it seems like it's going to be the competition to watch because there's right now three hats in the ring. Um, so good luck. What would you, without talking about other folks, what would you say Stacy Jordan brings to the PvP table for the Northeastern province? That is something important that they need to know.
Well, again, both of my other individuals are current RVPs. I've served in that role. Like I mentioned, I bring in experience being um, a trustee and being on a trustee board. So uh, it is that experience is, as I put in my platform, I will on day one understand what it's like to serve on a board because I've done that. Being able to provide a individual who has seen the evolution of the organization from when we did not have female grand presidents to two female grand presidents, when we did not have a African American as a candidate for grand president to being elected president, to having where we did not have a lot of roles that's filled. And so I think that each of us brings different perspectives to the role. And like I said, in the time that we are going through, where we are looking at our organization critically, with our strategic priorities, and making sure that DEI and the Leadership Foundation is throughout whatever we do in those four pillars. I am that person who has the necessary experience to really meet the moment that we're in right now.
It's not just a moment; it's a movement.
It
So
is,
I had to
but
throw
but
a,
that's
throw a Hamilton reference in when I can.
yeah, and it is. But you have to have the right individual to be able to steer the ship. And again, uh, the future of our fraternity looks bright. But at the same time, we also need to have someone who has, you know, the right skills, the right knowledge, the right abilities, because uh, as you mentioned earlier, uh, to be able to represent not only your province, but if I go to the South, or I go to the West, or I go to the South Central or the North Central, um, there is a gravitas that I bring to the table, and being able to engage different leaders who may feel that they are not represented at the table.
And if we wanted more information about Stacy or your campaign, where would we go?
I am on Instagram as STACYJDSP. I'm also has a campaign website. It is stacyjordan-dsp.com, and there's also a Facebook page. So if you go to any one of those avenues, my website also has information from some of the postings that I have done on Instagram. So it's that cross pollination, and also I am reachable by email as well if you want me to talk, uh, personally to your chapter. It is Stacy J, 4FORNEPVP@gmail.com.
Oh, cool. Stacy, thank you for your time today. Is there anything else you think you need to say that I haven't asked you about that you would like to get your message out?
Well, I just want the chapters in the Northeast province to know that if I'm elected as your PVP, you're definitely going to have a brother who's going to listen to your concerns, not only the collegiates, but also the alumni. I really want to engage everyone. I want everyone to feel that they are a part of the province and a part of the leadership that we want to have, because, you know, as being someone who has lived in the province since March of 2008, the province has been the province of champions, and we have been able to win a lot of national awards. We've had a provincial, at least two provincial and national quarries, the serve on the National Board of Directors, and really want to encourage all of the brothers to be engaged, or for those who haven't been engaged to be re-engaged. And I love the organization, and to really have the opportunity to be the next PVP would be an honor and a privilege. And I want to ask that you guys give me an opportunity to serve in this role, and let's make history together.
Well, Stacy, best of luck to you. I know these are crazy historic times, and we've never had an election virtually before. So, lots of interesting challenges, and I wish you the best luck navigating through all of these obstacles.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast, because I think, with it being a virtual uh, election season, people having the opportunity to go out and see and hear from us personally if they don't see us in person, to be able to have some information about us, and so they can make intelligent decisions when it comes to voting in August.
Well, Stacy, thank you for your time, and that brings this edition of Eddie's podcast to an end. We'll see everybody else next week.